world continues to struggle through a pandemic. The IOC is meeting tomorrow to discuss the games and insist that at this point, scrapping it is not an option. For more, let's go live to CP24's Jamie Griffith. Jamie, suddenly Florida's in the conversation?
Well, that's what we're hearing. At least the offer is on the table. We're going to get to that in just a sec, but you did mention that the IOC Executive Board, they're going to be meeting tomorrow. No doubt Tokyo 2021 will be high on the agenda, but IOC President Thomas Bach is really shooting down any notion or idea that the games are going to relocate. According to Bach, there is no plan B for Tokyo. In a letter to organizers, he writes, quote, 6 months ahead of the Games, the entire Olympic movement is looking forward to the opening ceremony on July 23rd. Now, Bach says the board will focus on addressing questions over the vaccination of athletes, international visitors, and the attendance of spectators and safety regulations. Now, currently, much of Japan is now under a state of emergency due to a third wave of COVID-19 infections, and even opinion polls in Japan shows that the public is strongly against staging the Games amid the pandemic. And while there's no word whatsoever that the Japan 2021 Olympic Games, or Tokyo 2021 Games are going to be relocated, the offer is still on the table. That's according to Florida's chief financial officer, who told the IOC that the Sunshine State would be happy to host in the event Japan backs out. Jimmy Petronis wrote in a letter to Thomas Bach in which he writes, quote, to encourage you to consider relocating the 2021 Olympics from Tokyo, Japan to the USA, and more specifically to Florida. He goes on to boast about the fact that Florida has successfully hosted the NBA, the NFL games, UFC during the pandemic, and even described the reopening of Disney World as, quote, an incredible model for how to run a complex organization in the midst of COVID-19. He also cites the strength of their vaccination rollout, their economy, but what he doesn't cite is the fact that Florida also has the fourth highest death toll from the coronavirus with over 25,000 deaths. So an interesting offer on the table, but nothing, the games will not be relocated. That's according to IOC head Thomas Bach. Back to you.
It'll be an interesting meeting either way, Jamie. Thank you. Well, Nova Scotia's minimum wage is set to increase on April 1st. The province has accepted a committee's recommendation to increase the minimum wage by 40 cents, meaning all workers will earn at least $12.95 an hour. Nova Scotia will have the second highest minimum wage in Atlantic Canada, which is a nickel less than PEI. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about President Biden's Buy American provisions and its limited exceptions for Canada today.
Over the past 4 years, we faced an American administration that was both unpredictable and extremely protectionistic, and we were able every step of the way to stand up for Canadian interests, whether it was renegotiating NAFTA in a way that protected our auto sector, kept supply management that President Trump wanted to dismantle, that ensured our cultural exemptions, our intellectual property rights. We were able to stand up for Canadians. We were able to defend our steel and aluminum workers. We were able to continue to demonstrate how important it is to keep essential supply lines going, even during a pandemic when the temptation was to completely shut down the borders.
And U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to reopen Obamacare enrollment this week. The move will be part of a series of executive orders on Thursday. During his campaign, Biden promised to bolster the health reform law he championed as vice president. Former President Donald Trump had cut the sign-up time in half. The change is meant to offer support for millions of uninsured Americans struggling because of the pandemic. Iran, meanwhile, is warning the Biden administration that time's running out for the U.S. to rejoin the 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and world powers. Iran also says it expects Washington to lift crippling economic sanctions that former President Trump imposed after pulling America out of the Atomic Accord in 2018. President Biden has signed a series of executive actions that reverse course on a wide range of issues, including climate change and immigration. And though Biden has pledged to return to the nuclear deal, Iran says there has yet to be any communication on the subject. Just about 324, -3 right now. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. The American Film Institute has announced its top 10 films of last year. We'll tell you what they are right after this.
Restrictions mean for you and for businesses across the GTA. The latest live, on air, online, and on the iHeartRadio app on CP24.
The American Film Institute has announced its top 10 films of 2020, and 2 include Chadwick Boseman's final on-screen performances.
It was a taste. That's when you and Slow Drag come in with the rhythm part, me and Cutler play on the break.
Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and the Spike Lee Vietnam drama To Five Bloods made the list. The two Netflix projects featured Boseman in what turned out to be some of his final work before he died last summer of colon cancer. Other movies picked by AFI include Regina King's One Night in Miami and Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand. And many people are going for walks these days, of course, to get a bit of fresh air. And now anyone with an Apple Watch can go for a stroll or a hike with a celebrity. The Time to Walk feature lets users listen to recordings of entertainers and athletes going for a walk and talking about their lives and surroundings. There are episodes featuring Dolly Parton, Shawn Mendes, and Draymond Green. New episodes of Time to Walk will appear in the workout app every Monday until the end of April. -3 and 3:27. You're watching Toronto's breaking news. CP24. The Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit now says preliminary tests show 99 people have tested positive for a variant of COVID-19. Much more coming up right after this break. The Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit now says preliminary tests show 99 people have tested positive for a variant of COVID-19. Well, the Premier is calling for stricter conditions at the borders. The Prime Minister warns that tougher measures are coming. Heavy snow is falling in Toronto and parts of the GTA with up to 10 centimeters expected before it's all finished. 3:30 and -3 from 299 Queen Street West. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Hello, I'm Nick Dixon. Well, we begin with the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit saying preliminary tests now show 99 more people have tested positive for a COVID-19 variant. CP24's Jackie Crandall's is live now with more on the story. Jackie, considering how sort of catchy this is a real concern.
Yeah, yesterday that number of people or cases within the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit that were identified as having this variant, this UK variant of COVID-19, that number was 7. Today, 99 more cases identified as being a variant case, although more testing needs to be done, or secondary testing needs to be done to determine exactly which variant it is. The unit, though, says it's likely to be the UK strain in these 99 other cases. Here's why. The large majority of those 99 cases have a connection to the outbreak at the Roberta Place long-term care home. 2 cases, though, have no connection to that long-term care home, so that has the local medical officer of health concerned about community spread.
This does speak to the potential for this to be transmitting now in the community. It's really, really important that people take that to heart and behave accordingly in order to reduce your risk of being part of transmission from this new variant. And if it isn't spreading readily in our community now, it may very well do so in the near future.
Of the 7 confirmed cases of the UK variant that were being reported yesterday, 6 are connected to Roberta Place. 1 is connected to the outbreak that is currently underway at the Bradford Valley Care Community Long-Term Care Home. So the UK variant obviously present in this community within the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and a big concern for health officials there that people really take the advice of health officials and practice all of those guidelines that we've been told from the beginning of this pandemic. Back to you for now.
As important now as it ever been. Thanks, Jackie.
Okay.
Well, Premier Ford is calling on Ottawa to implement tougher measures at the border, including a ban on flights from countries with the COVID-19 variant. CP24's Christina Tenali is live at Pearson now with more on what Premier Ford is looking for.
Yeah, Nick, aside from what you just mentioned, the Premier is looking for mandatory COVID-19 testing for all international travelers. Here live at Pearson today, we want to show you this is a voluntary program here. And what happens when you arrive? Hello, everyone. How's it been busy for the ladies and gentlemen of this program today? Let me explain how this works. So first of all, it's a voluntary program. It started earlier this month. When you arrive here at Pearson, you could choose to get a COVID-19 test here. Again, it's up to you. What is mandatory federally, again, as of earlier this month, is before you depart, before you make your way into this country, you must provide at your airport of departure a negative COVID-19 test taken within a 72, that is, there we go, hour period. So the Premier is looking to make this mandatory here on the other end also when you arrive. We know the Prime Minister has said, he said today there's going to be more restrictions announced soon. The Premier and other public officials are pushing for it. Here's reaction from the Premier and one traveler.
This is simple, folks. No politics, no nothing. You land in Toronto or other areas, and as far as I'm concerned, they have to be tested. Simple as that. We aren't the first country to require this, and we wouldn't be the last. So I can't figure out for the life of me why we aren't testing every single person that comes through this airport, and for that Ottawa as well, and the land crossings as well.
I had to get tested before I left, which I had done, and I also wanted to make sure there's no other risks involved. But they offered it to me, and I took it. I think it's appropriate. I think this is the right thing to do, as opposed to simply shutting down airspace. And because when you think about it, the risk of COVID from passengers is much smaller than a lot of other things that the governments are not dealing with.
So let me give you some other numbers here. According to the Ontario government, since the launch of this pilot here at Pearson, there have been 6,850 tests performed. Lab results show 146 of these tests were positive. That's 2.26% positivity. 4 positive tests are being screened for the potential that they're potentially positive for the UK COVID variant. On that note, I want to point out, one, as I noted, is not busy here at Pearson, is not busy at this voluntary COVID-19 test site here. And in terms of the numbers, according to the federal government, when we look at all the COVID-19 cases, positive cases here in the country, only 1.4% of positive cases are related to travel outside of the country. Nick, in saying that, though, if you go into the federal government's website, you can see a list of pages of flights arriving to this country, domestically and internationally, where there have been COVID-19 positive cases on board. So many pages, I couldn't even keep count. So there are cases coming in, but federally, they still only amount to 1% positivity. Back to you.
Okay, Christine and Talia, live at Pearson, thank you. Well, more than 250 Ontario doctors and researchers have come together to form Doctors for Justice in Long-Term Care. They're sharing their grave concern for the safety and well-being of residents and staff of long-term care homes. The group claims the Ford government hasn't done enough to protect the homes in the second wave and hasn't listened to advice from those on the front lines. So they've released a 9-point urgent call to action, which includes ending for-profit long-term care, hiring more staff and improving their pay, and allowing essential caregivers to help care for their loved ones.
This is no longer a new virus, and the same factors that led to the spread of COVID-19 that were in evidence during wave 1 in long-term care homes are still in evidence today. So in our open letter through Doctors for Justice in Long-Term Care, we have these asks for the government, and we are really hopeful that the government will listen to our call for action, given that this is an emergency for our seniors who live in long-term care. This is an emergency for the health workers who are doing their best to serve them and family caregivers.
There is growing concern the EU may impose conditions on the export of vaccines made in the bloc. European nations are facing vaccine shortages, with both Pfizer and AstraZeneca cutting delivery schedules. Now, the EU could prevent doses from going to countries outside the bloc until its own orders are filled. The European Commission insists any system would be to monitor whether companies respect their EU commitments to the EU.
Spoke to the CEO of Moderna about an hour and a half ago. So the topic of the recent musings by Europe certainly came up. And it was very, very clear that the Canadian contracts that have been signed and the delivery schedule laid out will be respected.
Meantime, a Canadian-made vaccine is apparently in the works. Calgary's Providence Therapeutics is launching human clinical trials of a COVID-19 shot. 60 people in Toronto will be monitored for 13 months, with the first results expected next month. Pending approval, a larger phase 2 trial could start in May. If that's successful, we could see the vaccine released by the end of this year. Overall today, Ontario is reporting 1,740 new cases of COVID-19 and 63 more deaths, 35 of which are from long-term care residents. Although the province normally sees lower case numbers on Mondays and Tuesdays, we should point out today's number is the lowest case count since December 13th. Locally, 677 new cases are here in Toronto, 320 in Peel, 144 in York Region, 51 new cases in Durham, and 49 in Halton. Today's numbers are based on testing of just under 31,000. Support staff at a downtown public school that serves students with disabilities are refusing to work over safety concerns. CP24's Kayla Williams is live now with more on this story. Kayla.
Yeah, Nick, that's right. 22 support staff members over at Beverly School, they are refusing to work for a second day in a row now when it comes to concerns that they feel need to be addressed first before they return to work in person. This is a live shot this afternoon of the school in downtown Toronto. And as many of you know, in-person learning is suspended at most schools across the GTA because of the surge of COVID-19 cases. But education continues in person at some schools which cater to students with special needs. Some of the staff there say that there are a plethora of health and safety concerns, including challenges with proper mask wearing. Now, the board has brought in administrators from nearby schools, such as principals and vice principals, but it's a temporary solution, and they're actively working to address the workers' concerns through conversations with their union. Now, John Weatherup, he's the president of CUPE Local 4400. He spoke earlier today, and he detailed some of the issues that members are having, such as frequently having their masks being ripped off by some of the children. Now, he did say that the students with disabilities are not trying to do anything wrong, of course, but there is a need for new protocol to help protect the health and safety of everyone. Here's more from him, as well as TDSB spokesperson Sherry Schwartz-Maltz.
I've been around 20 years. Special education has been ignored by this government and other governments for 20 years. They're always the last thought of. And I don't think they understand, like I said, the intrication of special ed and COVID. It has a double-edged sword, and these children are some of the most vulnerable. And so it's both the staff and the students. I don't think they've actually put their mind to the funding for those types of programs.
There's a lot of love inside that building, right? And there's a lot of family feeling. So 100%, everybody has to come together, and our staff have to feel safe and secure. Inside, there's TDSB people here from health and safety. I know they've told me that there is an unbelievable amount of enhanced cleaning that happens every single day. So we just need to listen, and we need to find a solution together.
Now, the board did confirm, Nick, that there have been a total of 5 confirmed COVID-19 cases related to the Beverly School, one of them being a student, another involving a staff member, as well as 3 other cases involving bus drivers, all of which have now been resolved. But of course, we'll keep a very close eye on it. Today, as I mentioned, marks the second day in a row that staff have refused to work, and we'll see just how long this goes on, for the week or into next week. Back to you.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Thanks, Kayla. Group of experts has a few suggestions on what lessons Canada can learn from the pandemic. One epidemiologist says COVID-19 has exposed the fault lines in Canadian society by showing how long-standing inequities contributed to higher rates of infections and mortality. A UBC population health expert says spending on social determinants of health, such as housing, is needed to decrease sickness and death. Another expert says there is a disconnect between federal and provincial actions to fight the pandemic, as well as poor communication. A new report suggests billions in federal money sent to the provinces for pandemic relief remains unspent. The analysis by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says 6 out of 10 provinces haven't spent all of their allocated dollars, including on things like personal protective equipment. Also sitting idle is some money designed as wage top-ups for workers deemed essential, like those in long-term care facilities and in food stores. 3:42, -3, and this is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Hard to make out the CN Tower through the snow today, but it's there, and of course the snow's still falling. We'll have an update on weather and traffic after this. 3:44, time to talk traffic and weather right now. We'll start with the forecast. Our meteorologist Chris Potter is in Barrie under the same gray skies we're facing. But Chris, the big question, how much longer should we expect the snow to fall?
I don't think that it's going to last through the evening. I think that by 6 to 7, we should at least see the steadiest snow start to ease. We're left with kind of leftover flurries with little to no of further accumulation. And then the story becomes cold as we get through tomorrow night and into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Saturday night. We'll probably see that extreme cold weather alert being reissued for the city of Toronto as we get possibly even colder than we were this past weekend. Normal daytime high for this time of year is around -2. Normal overnight low is around -11. We're going to be below both those numbers as we head through Wednesday night and through, once again, all those mentioned days. -2 right now in the city. Obviously, the story currently is snowfall, which continues to fall. and at times it was heavier. The snowfall warning has just been dropped through Halton Peel because, well, the snow intensity is starting to back off. Like I said, by the early evening, the steadiest snow is gone, lifting to the north and east, and then we're left with a few lingering flurries with no further accumulation. So I guess what I'm saying is the worst is over. By the time we march into tomorrow morning, lots of sun through the morning. By the afternoon, we generally become gray, almost overcast, but no chance for snow. The northerly winds, the colder air begins to move in, and that will allow some lake effect flurries, some highly localized pockets of snow to develop south of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. By the time we march into the evening, the winds become more aligned from the northwest, which will allow lake effect streamers to migrate down towards the city of Toronto before being forced westward as the winds once again become more northerly. The bulk of our snow has already fallen, and once again, we will be improving by the early evening. We'll become overcast for Wednesday, but like I said before, no snow, highs around -3 to -4, colder for Thursday with a chance of evening flurries, probably going to feel like the mid-teens during the afternoon as well. By the time we march into Friday, similar story. We should actually see a lot more sun than cloud. By Saturday, similar story, at least to start. Increasing the clouds are then expected, and the opportunity for a few evening flakes, but it's really into Sunday, probably late day, that we get into the chance of steadier snowfall. At this point, it looks like that chance would last through Sunday night and into Monday morning before the snow once again tapers to flurries, and that will happen. Just give it about an hour and a half. Back to you.
Well, it continues to be a snow-covered drive. Snow starting to ease off depending on your route, but we do have numerous issues because of the snow. Long-standing problems happening on the QEW Toronto bound. Looks like this is not even a roadway, hasn't even been cleared, but this is following a fatal collision investigation from early this morning through Brant. Still no traffic getting by, and you are still being forced off the highway at Fairview Street. And if you're trying to look for an alternative, 407 Fairview, as well as the 403 and Dundas, some good routes to get you through. Everything should be reopened around 5 this evening. Also, problems are still lingering. This is on the 403. We're traveling on the eastbound side. Just the right lane getting by. It was following this jackknife transport truck. Thought it'd be cleared by now. Not the case. So creating a bit of a delay as you try to get off the QEW and head on to the 403. Also, problems happening in the east end. This is the westbound 401 in the collectors on the approach to Port Union. Left lane blocked at the collision. A couple of vehicles ended up spinning out. And we have problems north of the city. Southbound on the 400. This is just south of King Road. You'll find the right lane and shoulder blocked at the collision. A lot of these roadways are track bearers, so you want to take your time and drive with a lot of extra caution this afternoon. I'll send it back to you.
The CP24 traffic report is brought to you by CapitalDirect.ca.